What's your position you're drafting? Number one. And what's
Right.
the player you're drafting?
Shall I go first?
Yes, because you've
So I've
done
got an
numbers,
answer.
Paul. Well done. Thank you, Paul.
See? And I'm going to answer this in the correct order as well, rather than the quantum way I did it in the first episode. Yeah, so I am going to go for, and it's based on something I've written about, and I think I might have mentioned it on one of our podcasts, but I will go for second rows first.
Well done.
Because they are, if you look at the stats over Europe, they are the ones who are now earning the most. And my basic scientific evolutionary brain is that there aren't that many guys who were born that size, or women. You know, how many people do you know who are 6'8" with hands like shovels and whatever it might be, and can run and are fearless and can catch a ball and like getting hurt? So they would always be my first choice if you can get 2 or 3 of those. And it's one thing the Welsh regions haven't done particularly well, I think. But, you know, any of those, you know, Otoje, straight off the top, he'd be my first signing probably. Or I might go a bit cheaper. I'll go for Crewis.
I thought we were picking from the Pro 14, Paul.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant globally. Oh, Pro 14. Pro 14, that's easy. That's James Ryan.
This is a discerning podcast. You're not just picking
Sorry, I think you meant globally.
If it's Pro 14, that guy I saw in the World Cup, he looked good.
Well, if it's Pro 14, it's James Ryan.
I think Paul's right with locks. Mark Bennett, who was my conditioning coach at the Ospreys, and then I took him to Bristol. He's a statistician as well as a conditioning coach, and as well as looking like a nightclub bouncer, he's the perfect conditioning coach, right? He's fit as you like. But you know, we were doing some work for years, you know, accumulating all of these stats and performance coding analysis that we're doing in every game. He crunched them all and eventually came up with a formula, almost trying to predict performance or predict results, if you like, based on selection and form and data. And for a long time, we recognized that if your second rows hit so many benchmarks in a game, so if let's say, I'll throw these out there, if they missed less than 5% tackles, if they carried between 8 and 12 times in a game, and made X amount of meters, that whatever it was, right? Key performance indicators, there would be a 90% plus chance of you winning the game.
God.
Now, you know that there's factors that can contribute to that, refs' decisions, bounce of the ball, but yeah, that's what we were working towards. Cut a long story short, you know, second rows are really valuable. If you think about second row, they're involved in every facet of the game. Attack, whether it be ball carrying or certainly clearing rucks. Defense, making tackles around the fringes, counter-rucking or stealing the ball. Line out in attack, that either lift in or jump in or decoying, know all the calls. Line out defense, exactly the same. They're pushing in both ways of the scrum. They're primarily the guys that catch the kickoff or have to lift or be lifted. They're in everything in the game. And how many leaders have we had, captains of teams, second rows? We named quite a couple tonight. So, yeah, who would I pick? First, I probably would go James Ryan. I think he does a lot of work. He's young enough, good value for money, got growth. Yeah, I go for him.
See, I knew what I was doing. I could have coached the Ospreys. Look at this.
Easy in a piece of cake.
I'm completely on the same page. I wouldn't have been a couple of years back because I think that the value in the scrum has changed. The scrum, the law changes, or rather the interpretation changes, and the referees have been told, no, listen, if it's playable, don't go straight for penalty. We want to get that ball out. So I think the scrum is less of a weapon there. And also our props do not play that long. So I will say, under the present game, I would say James Ryan is our number one pick in the draft.
I think he is.
One change to the game would change that. If we reduce the number of subs on a bench, I might pick Tyke Furlong first. Because he'd probably play, say, 80 minutes most games instead of the current 50, 55, 60. And that to me would be a huge difference, because as a tight head prop, what you get from him is phenomenal.
Right, I'm gonna disagree with all of you.
Oh, hang on.
Somebody has to at this
What's he
point.
going for?
The Lemmings all following Sean there.
Hey,
Paul
Lemmings.
went first. Paul went first.
Listen, Lemmings. We are following a professional coach here.
I'd actually be so I have my position that I know I would, if I was drafting for a Pro 14, that I would go to. Well, I'll tell you the position, but the type of players that would really, if I can pick any player from the get-go, the guys that would really entice me would be wingers and scrum halves, because they can influence. Scrum halves, a good one, can win you some really big games. But some of the wingers and fullbacks that can win you a game that you absolutely do not deserve. If you have James Lowe in your team, if you have Johnny McNichol in your team, these guys can save your bacon. See when that second row is injured, lads. See when he's not having a good game.
No.
Guess who rides to the rescue, okay?
Yeah. James Lowe scores 4 in the corner.
And by the way, James Lowe, you can chuck him in the back row if you're short as well. Like, you know, he's a big beastie of a boy. But the position I'm going to go for, and I think it's because it's a position where there's just such a plethora of excellent players in it. I'm going to go for number 7. And it's a high-risk position because there's a lot of guys can get injured there.
Yeah.
But I look at guys like Benetton Bramstein. You look at Hamish Watson. You know, Ollie Robinson. Ollie Robinson you'll have all season because he's never going to play for England. What a value for money signing he'd be. And he's in his mid-20s as well.
Or Will Boyd.
Or Will Boyd. Or Josh McLeod. Some of these guys.
Any of those guys.
Tane Basham.
Tane Basham. Class.
You want to talk about upside and, you know, huge space there before he hits the ceiling. But the two guys that I would be torn to pick first would be between Justin Tipperick and Josh van der Fleer. And age may not be on Justin Tipperick's side, but history shows he's generally available, even when he is playing for Wales. He doesn't get injured too often. And my God, there are centres playing in every competition in the world that don't have his footballing ability. And the other one, and this is where I hate to go back to the madding crowd here because everybody's picking a Leinster player, but Josh van der Fleer is phenomenal.
Class.
His work rate, and this is what I would challenge anyone. Next time you're watching him play, no matter what, you know, with Guinness PRO14, Champions Cup, playing international rugby, watch Josh van der Fleer because everyone sees the red scrum cap and he's good at getting turnovers. But just look at how much movement that red scrum cap makes. He is everywhere. He is relentless. He carries, he tackles and tackles and tackles. And like we see these tackle records and high percentage volume tackles made by second rows who are essentially pillar defenders all the time, and they should be making those tackles. But when you start seeing guys in the back row do it, and Justin Tipperick's no stranger to this either, guys like Ollie Cracknell, really good, you know, in terms of making these hits. If you're playing in the back row and you're doing all the other things that you're supposed to do, and you're supposed to be mobile and you're supposed to be making your tackles, so yeah, I'm not trying to be contrary. That's just my
I think that's a good
rugby
point.
played in the tournament, and I see how earning a turnover can get you tries, and that's the way I think some of the teams are coached. That a turnover equals an opportunity for 7 points.
Do you know an interesting point about back row forwards? Because I was looking at the average wages in the top 14 per position, right? So lock was the highest, and then 10, I think it was 10, 15, and then tight head. But one of the lowest paid wages was open side flanker. And it's weird, whenever I come on this podcast, I always start thinking about the NFL because I know how much you love it. And I was watching one of those, you know, follow a team for the season. And there was a thing on there saying about how running backs' wages have decreased massively over the last 20 seasons because it's now become a passing game, and that the running backs get injured so often that they just treat them like sausages, basically, in a machine. So it's like you get a new one in every 3 years. He carries himself to death, gets really messed up, and then get another one. And it's almost like that has happened to a lot of open sides. You know, you look at like Sam Warburton, for instance, you look what's happened to Ellis Jenkins, who's in the middle of it now. That position's become so untenable, isn't it, as a long-term career? You just can't play it until you're sort of 35 or 34. And I'd wondered if there was a draft system or whatever we're talking about theoretically, whether, the 7 isn't worth spending your money on, really, because there's a pretty good chance by the time they're 28, they'll be hobbling around.
And that's why Sean shaking his head at me.
No, I'm not shaking. I'm not shaking head. It's a really interesting conversation. It is, because the worm has turned, isn't it, a little bit with regards to 7s. We're seeing less challenging at the ruck or the jackal. How many of them are useful in the line out? How many of them are real good ball carriers? Tipuric and Van der Vliet are exceptions to the rule. But the other argument is then they're not worth as much because, do you know what? There's so many of them. There's another one off the ramp. There's that. But it's a really interesting conversation. I was thinking while you were talking there of a lot of it is to do with what your particular team requires as well. We may not require a second row. I remember when, unfortunately, the Celtic Warriors, the demise of in 2004, it was essentially a draft between the Welsh regions, because they are all those players, and there was great players in there, went into a room, and the other regions, surviving regions, were bartering for who they wanted, and the number 1 pick, do you know who he was?
Gethin Jenkins.
Ian Goff.
Ryan Jones.
Was he really? Of course he was.
In terms of age, value for money, and position, he was a bargain, up and coming. Those who did their homework, and we got him. Everyone wanted him. We got him. He transformed us the following season, along with David Bishop and Sonny Parker. So, again, he suited what we needed. Luckily, that season, Alan Wynne and Ian Evans came along as well. So before you know it, the juggernaut was going. But see, Ryan was an out-and-out 8 at the time, and later became a 6 and a 4. So his versatility crept in. So it could be a kicker. It could be one team might require a kicker and value. I like you watched that Michael Jordan thing. He came out, I think, as the 3rd pick.
Yeah, 4th behind Sam Bowie.
4th, sorry. And fate plays a part, because whoever was making the first pick back in 80, whatever it was, could have easily picked any one of them. But they went for, by the time it came to the Chicago Bulls, the next one off the ramp was Michael Jordan. Can you believe? Can you believe how lucky in hindsight you'd be? Oh, we got Michael Jordan. Well, he became the best ever basketballer in the history of the game. Yeah.
And probably athlete. He's probably the best. In my book, he's number 1 athlete. I've got
the worst actor, yeah.
And the worst actor. Mind you, Space Jam did all right. The box office. I'm all about the numbers.
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting? Not one of us mentioned an out half.